Are you tired from Nimzo-Larsen Attack? Are you confused after first move b3? I'm here to show you a very nice way how to play against first move b3 without memorizing a ton of theory. In this video, I will briefly explain you what is the best line against this opening approach. I hope that will help you, and I really know that will help you. My name is PavelChess. I welcome you to my YouTube channel, and let's start our opening excursion. b3 is a tricky move, and I'm offering you to go straight to the main line. e5, we want to conquer the center if we have the ability. Bishop b2, knight c6, our pawn is hanging, and the main line for white is e3. So one of the general white's ideas is to put the bishop on b5 and get the pressure to the pawn on e5, like bishop takes c6, at some moment bishop takes e5. We're continuing with knight f6, and after bishop b5, we're doing a tricky move, bishop d6. That is a very interesting approach, basically. The point of this move that it looks weird because we are blocking the d-pawn and seems that our bishop from c8 can't go to the game. But our next idea, and we will see this, like for example I'm doing a random move, is after h3 a6, I will take with the d-pawn and I will unlock the bishop to make him play in this game. And we will have a pair of bishops that is basically very valuable. So returning back to the position after bishop d6, white has generally several main lines. Knight e3 is the most popular move, knight e2 is the main sideline, and we need to care about bishop takes c6 immediately just to be sure because it's the third line. So, okay, let's start with a knight e2. Knight e2, basically we can do a6 straight to our plan. Now if white will go bishop c4, then we can go with b5, trapping the bishop. So white forced to take, d takes c6. And in this position, for example, on the logical move castle, that looks very common for white, I love the computer approach h5. He always loves to move this h-pawn till to the end. So our idea is to move it up and make the white's king position not that comfortable. For example, after d3, h4, if white will try to stop this pawn with h3, at some moment I want to use the hook on h3 with g5, g4, unlocking the king. So we can finish our development, queen e7, very useful move. We want to protect the pawn one more time, we want to do the long castle at some moment. For example, the line could be like this, knight d2, bishop e6. So I really want to go castle long, and I want to play g5, and for some move like knight c4, I'm ready to drop this bishop. Now the structure is basically symmetrical. Both of us, we have double pawns, and after the long castle, yeah, our plan is g5, g4, and this position looks very nice for black. So returning back, after the bishop c6, d takes c6. In this position, white mostly trying to hide the castle. They're trying to play, for example, d3. Black has a lot of interesting ideas. So for example, we can do bishop e6, a nice developing move. We are keeping in mind our idea queen e7 castle long, very typical for such kind of a structure. Knight goes d2, and I like the move h5 immediately. So computer style of gameplay, we always moving this h-pawn. I will show you the line when we are moving both pawns, h and a, in these positions. So for example, after like h3, I can go rook h6, another computer approach. The rooks comes to g6 maybe to have some attack to the g2 and so on. Like white are not castling because it looks really strange, and white could get into attack. So knight f3, knight d7, protecting the pawn on e5, queen d2. Looks logical for white to try to avoid this and go castle long. Queen e7, castle long. And here we can do something like bishop goes b4, bishop goes c3, a5. I told you that at some track we will move both a and h pawn in this position. King goes b1, and for example c5. And then I want to play something like b5, a4, and start an attack to this king. We have a kind of a space advantage in this situation, and it's not that easy for white to build up a gameplay. So I really like this position. And don't forget that our rook could be transposed to the queen side as well, due to the attacking reasons. So that's a very interesting line, I believe, and after knight d2, white can start even to suffer very quickly, especially if they will do the castle short very fast. So we can return back to the other line. And the other line is after bishop goes d6 to play knight e3. It's basically the main idea. So here black has two interesting approaches. Computer votes for bishop e7, really interesting move. His idea now is that he forced the knight to go to a3, so white can't do something like this, takes, bishop takes e5, because we just will capture the knight. So that's one of the main idea, and computer thinks that the knight on a3 is not that well placed as it could be, and we want to go d5, conquer the center, and do our gameplay. So in this position, like knight c4 looks the main. We can do even e4. We want to cut the knight f3, and something like takes, knight e2, h5, for example, right? We already know the strategy in such type of position to move up the pawn. As well, the other line, if not knight c4, for example, knight e2, I can just do d5 in this position. Again, bishop e5, bishop takes e3. That looks very normal. If white will try to play bishop takes e6, we can do d6. Everything is good. So returning back bishop e7 is an interesting approach that you also can test in your games. The main line, according to the database of masters, is to go knight e5. So also a logical move. We cut the knight c4 and we want to play a6 at some moment. So white has some troubles. For example, on knight e2, I can go a6 and the bishop is already trapped. And due to this, the main line is to go bishop e2 back, trying to save him. Black can also think here about bishop e7. Again, the knight on e3 is hanging, they can't take on e5. The main line is a6, just to prevent knight b5 at some ideas. Like for example, c4, castle, knight c2, rook e8. So what is our idea of rook e8? Yeah, we are supporting the center. And as well, I want to have bishop f8 move just to move the d pawn and unlock the bishop from c8. Also very common idea. Let's imagine some line d3, b5, also interesting. I want to put my bishop to the b7 to work him on the diagonal, like knight f3, c5. It starts to remind a bit Chigorin line in the Ruy Lopez, like castle, bishop b7. That's a playable position for both sides. Complicated, interesting, and we avoided all these general ideas of why they wanted to press our center very quickly, but now they have a pretty weak pieces, honestly, in this position. So as we discussed knight e2 and knight e3, let's pay some attention to the move bishop takes e6. It's the third line, even according to the player's database. We can just take d3, and here we can use our bishop, for example, bishop g4, knight goes e2, queen goes e7, knight goes d2, just castle long. And I like this position. I like to play it as black, so we also keeps in mind all over these h-pawn ideas. We are good in the center, and I suppose that line is very good for black. So in general, this line is not require a lot of knowledge from black, and we can just play it from scratch, and that would be a nice option. Instead of playing knight bishop b5, I need to say a few words about the c4 move. It's when white trying to go for the some Sicilian ways, right? For example, after d5 takes a3 to hide the b4 square out of the knights. That's a kind of a vice versa Sicilian defense. But here black have a normal plan. For example, bishop d6, queen c2, castle. So I'm doing my development step by step, using that white spent too much time for actions on the queen side, like knight f3, queen f7 to support the pawn on the e5, d3, f5, bishop goes e2, king h8, a very typical prophylaxis idea to go away from this tension with this knight, not to be pinned at some moment. So knight goes d2, bishop d7, castle. We can do immediately rook f6, rook h6. For the blitz and bullet, especially interesting approach. Also normal line is to go rook e8, like knight c4, rook f6 in this position. So that is a very complicated, interesting situation. We want to transpose our rook in case to have some attack to this king. I think that it should be easier to play as black in this situation, and I recommend you to test this line as black. I hope that this opening video was useful for you. Below the video you can find a link to the Chess Studio to have everything of that in the PGN format. I hope that you will use it and win a lot of games. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel. See you in my new videos.